Treasures in heaven. All right.
So as he's doing, this is Hakainde Hichilema, HH, it's easier. President HH. He was elected as president back in 2021, and he is an independently wealthy businessman. He is part of the Seventh Day Adventist uh, organization, and on Saturdays he goes to the Seventh Day Church, and then on Sundays he rotates because he says, "I am the president of all the Zambian people." So this Sunday he'll be at the Catholic, next Sunday he'll be a Pentecostal, next Sunday he's at this one, and he just rotates through. And so he's been good for the country. The kwacha strengthened under his leadership. It originally was 22 kwacha to the US dollar and it's down around 16 now, which is about 13 kwacha to the Canadian dollar. So that's been very helpful to the country. Other way. There we go. Just to give some context for those who may not know, we moved to Chitokoloki, commended full time in 2009, and that was us in 2009. That's us at Christmas. Mackenzie is the youngest, and Alexander's the oldest, and you can see who the tallest is. So we won't rub that in. We'll just keep it along. In April, Lord willing, Alexander will graduate from Humber College, Fire Services, and Mackenzie will graduate from grade 12. And Lord willing, in July, we'll be moving to the London area where Mackenzie will start Fanshawe College. And Alexandra is in the process of having to decide. She's been accepted both at the fire school in Lambton College in Sarnia and the fire school in Georgian up in Barrie. So she has to make that decision where she's going for a year program for fire services up in those. As a result of this, back 2 years ago, July, I say we moved back to Canada for the sake of their education. Rhonda and the girls stay in Canada, obviously, but I go back and forth every 2 months. So since we came back July 2021, I did a trip September, October. 2022, I did January, February, April to the middle of June, and then September, October. And then I've been again already this year, January, February. The reason for those dates, their school year runs January to December, not September. It's January to December. So they have April, August, and December off. They get a month each. So January, February, March is one semester. April's off. May, June, July, second semester. August is off. And then October, November is the sort of the third. September, October, November is the third. But November is mostly the government exams for grades 7, 9, and 12. Those are the only 3 years they have government exams. So I try to coordinate my visits in those time frames so that the youth work carries on, because during the breaks of April, August, and December, the kids are off playing. They have no interest in really coming to Bible studies. Now, people have often asked, what is Chitokoloki Mission? That's Chitokoloki Mission. This is the Zambezi River, full of crocodiles. Anybody wants some swimming? This red circle is our house. This is the assembly here, and this is the hospital, and of course the airstrip. So we have a hospital here, and this is a piece of the hospital here, and then staff houses up that way. There's a pointer on here. Up in this area, up at the top, used to be a leper colony. It has been converted into a conference center of sorts. Leprosy used to be a problem. Now, a couple antibiotics and you're good to go. So that has been changed. Down here in the bottom left is the high school and the basic school. This tower here is where I get my internet from. That's one of the towers. There's another tower way up here in Yakananga Village that has another tower, but we used to have to do it off satellite, big dish in the backyard, but now we can do it much faster, much cheaper off the cell towers. I used to be heavily involved in the high school. Now I am moderately involved in the high school. I tried to back away. They don't really let me back away, but I've attempted. So that is Chitokoloki Mission. That runway is about 850 meters. So it gives you an idea of size. When I was there, January, February, there was a young lady that was taken by a crow in that river. And so one of the things that we're involved in is I deal a lot with cultural government. Zambia has two governments. They have a cultural government and then they have an official government, an elected government. And the cultural traditional government functions parallel. And that consists of a headman of each village who reports to a sub-chief. In our area, it's Chief Ashima, who reports to the senior chief or the paramount Lunda chief, Chief Ashindi. There are three sub-chiefs surrounding our area: Chief Impidi, Chief Nyakulenga, and Chief Ashima. Nyakulenga is the biological sister of Chief Ashindi. Chief Impidi was actually in the hospital when I was just there, so I spent a lot of time visiting him in the hospital. Many people are afraid of the chiefs. I don't know why, they're people. They're very powerful, but I would visit them no problem. I have no issue visiting these individuals. Um, I have their numbers in my phone. I call them. And this picture here was actually taken a few years ago when I was the officiant at his daughter's wedding. They wanted a Christian wedding, and he called me. I was about ready to walk into the ministry meeting on a Wednesday afternoon, and he called me and said, "My daughter wants you to be the officiant at her wedding. Will you do it?" I'm like, "Well, when is it?" He said, "Saturday." So we went down and did the wedding. And as long as you're dealing with the Lunda chiefs, these are Lunda chiefs. As long as you're dealing with the Lunda people, you have to speak Lunda. The very old and the very young in the village, you can't talk to them in English. It doesn't work. I won't understand you. So here's, I mean, everybody knows Micah 6 and 8, right? Good, excellent. Speaks in tongues. Good for you. Now, the one thing in the Lunda language is this N right here. It's called the nasalized N. There's another one down here. There's a young man who Andrew knows well, Chimwanga. He has it in his name. To say that N correctly, it's not a Spanish N. It's not mañana. That would be totally wrong. That N, you take your tongue, you shove it to the back of your throat, and you make your nose vibrate. So it's kukeng, kukenga. That's the N there. And that's the actual word there, kenga. It's to want love. Anyway, I'll just go through it. E muntu, yena na kulej de hichuma chinawahi. Indi Jehovah na kengi chumani kudei na kengi wili chalonga. Kengi lui. Wendi nanzamiye chakuti zoza. Micah 6 and 8. Now, the Lunda people have words for their numbers, but they count by fives. So they'll just say hymn 368. Because if you count by five or by five, you have to say 3 by 100, and then you have to say 10 by 6, or actually 10 by 5 and 1. So it's easier to say 368 because they count by fives. So what does this mean? Well, that's what it means. Lunda is a gender neutral. Spanish, French all have genders. Lunda's gender neutral. There's no he, she. Everybody wanting their pronouns. In Zambia, there aren't pronouns. There's no he, she. It's either you plural or you singular. That's just the way it is. And when I say the word yena, it's he or she. It means both. It's just somebody other than me. So you, muntu, person. You person. There's yena right there. He or she. Depends on who you're referring to. If I'm referring to a woman, that's the feminine. If I'm referring to male, it takes the masculine. So it's all a language of context. Yena nakuleji, he desires of you already a thing. Chuma shinawahi, that is good. Indi, his or her Yehovah, nakangi wants you. Wants what thing of you? Kind of twist your tongue around a bit. And there it is. Nakangi, he or she wants. So what's the context here? Context is God. So that nakangi, he or she, context of God, so it would be he. Wili chalonga, to do the right thing, to do justice. Ukengi, Louis. Louis has many, many meanings. Mercy, love, grace, kindness. So it's context. When I'm preaching now in Lunda, I will only use the word Louis for grace, or for mercy, sorry, mercy. Because grace, you can say the gift of God. The gift of God. That's grace. He gives you something as a gift. Thankfully, in the Luvali language, which is the other tribe in the area, they actually have independent words for mercy and grace. So I use the Luvali words for mercy and grace when I'm speaking of them as well, depending on the situation. You walk. Wendy, non-Zambi. With in Zambi is God. Of yours. Yea. Chakudi Zoza. With humbleness. You can see that many of their verbs, they put things on the beginning and they put things on the end. Suffix, prefix, that's the way the language works. I've learned Spanish, I've learned French. This was way harder to learn because it's a contextual language. Every Sunday afternoon, we're out in one of 4 villages. This is actually Chambala village, Chawanga, Chambala. He's the head man of this village. He's also an elder in the assembly, and he's a head of department at the high school for social sciences. And this is what a village looks like. Sometimes, actually, when I was speaking, my wrist started vibrating because Chawanga actually sent me videos and pictures of the village that he had just finished at this afternoon in Zambia, which is a far bigger village than this one. We rotate through 4 villages still: Chia, Chambala, Sampasa, and Nyakanega. These young men, they're hard to see. There will be a picture at the end, but there's 4 young men in here. And they, about 6 years ago, maybe 7 years ago, we were leaving a village, getting ready to come back on furlough during June, July. And I said to the headman, as I often do, because you need permission from the headman to get into a village. It's their village. I said, I'll see you when I get back from furlough, so there'll be no village work during May, June, July. And as we walked out, one of the young men said to me, but why can't we do it when you're in Canada? I said, why? Perfect. So we went back and we visited all the headmen that we went to. We said, can these guys come and do it? Oh, yeah, absolutely. Just give us a program. And so while we're here, they're doing the village work. That's what you want. You want the local people doing the work. It used to be that I would set up a program for the 4 villages and we'd rotate through. And I'd say, okay, Peter, can you speak on this? And Andrew, can you speak on this? And can you speak on? Yeah, okay, break that account. Now, when I get back, they're like, Shawn, you're speaking at this one and this one, we're doing the rest. Okay. They're in charge. And that's great. That's fabulous. So we'll open with some singing. Someone will preach. It's not always me. Someone will preach. And then I hand out sweets or candy to the young people. Actually, to everybody. Everybody gets a sweet. If they sat and listened, everybody gets a candy. Why not, right? Why not? Sunday morning, there's an assembly in Chitokoloki, but I'm often off visiting. This assembly here, the assembly of Mayangu, it's about 5 minutes down the road. I've committed to them that I would go once every trip, or once a month. If I'm there full time, I would go once a month. It's a little assembly, and they struggle. They don't have very many men in fellowship, which is a problem with all the assemblies, really. They don't have very many men, but they carry on, and they do very, very well. One of the tricks I picked up while I was originally we first went to Zambia was you never tell them when you're coming. There's one time I got a letter from an assembly way out in the bush. It was an hour and a half drive in the bush, and it was signed by 16 men. Come and help us. So, all right. So myself and two other men, we piled in the car early Sunday morning because we knew it was an hour and a half. And we drove out to the assembly in the bush. We got there. There's nobody there. So we said to the young lady that came out to meet us from a house nearby, we said, "What? Oh, they haven't met for about 3 months now. How about Sunday school? Oh, no, they don't do Sunday school. There's nothing happens at that building anymore. Not for 3 months." Now, if I had told them I was going, I would have gotten the full show. But if you don't tell them, you know what's really going on. We ended up leaving that assembly, driving back 5 minutes to us, an assembly that the building was maybe 8 feet by 10 feet. It was about the size of a bedroom. And when we got there, they were in the middle of Sunday school. In fact, on the way back, we picked up two women who were walking from where that other assembly was back because they knew they would break bread. And so we waited in the car, and Sunday school finished. And when the kids came piling out of the building, it reminded me of the circus when clowns pile out of a Volkswagen. Because I was looking, I'm like, they're still coming. There was probably about 75 kids in that little room. It was unbelievable. It was like clowns coming out of a Volkswagen. They came out of the windows, came out the door, came out of everything because they just wanted out. So that's my angle up in the top there. This is an assembly. I'll start with this one. This is Kayula here. I was just there this last trip, and one of the other missionary ladies said, "Oh, you're going to Kayula?" And I said, "Yes." She said, "Would you mind bringing Sunday school prizes?" I said, "Sure, I'll bring Sunday school." So she gave me 90 Sunday school prizes. The minute I arrived, I knew I had too few. We ended up being 30 short. I went back. She did up 30 more. I took the motorbike. We went back out to Kayula, and I gave them to one of the elders in the assembly, and I said, "Give this to the Sunday school teachers." We wrote the kids' names on that had missed to make sure they got their Sunday school prizes. Niamonga, this assembly here, it's about 5 minutes the other side. So there's Mayangu, the mission, and then Niamonga. And Niamonga was originally built in a leper village. So a lot of people who had leprosy or family went out to that village, about 5 kilometers away from the mission. Um, but two of the individuals that make up a part of this assembly, there's one gentleman right there, and his wife, who you can't see. Anyway, him and his wife, mostly blind, he cannot walk. It took him about 10 minutes to shuffle from where he's sitting to the tree where my car was parked when I was driving to the hospital. He can't walk. So once every about 6 weeks, the assembly, which is right here, of Niamonga, goes to his house, which is about 2 kilometers down the road, and they break bread in his front yard. That's his house in the background, so that they can be a part of the assembly and break bread once in a while. And this is there again, these are the men that were there to help out in the breaking bread at Niamonga. Every Monday we have a Bible study in Zambezi, mostly of women from the local market that sell vegetables on the road. There's Jack, and there's Chiwanga there, and a couple other men that come. The reason they're not in the picture, they were flipping all the chairs back around. Make sure. This building is the Gospel Hall in Zambezi. We had a meeting there with the elders of Zambezi one time, and they said, "We hear that you're having a Bible study in Zambezi." And we said, "Yes." So we told them what it was about. And they said, "We can't do what you're doing, but if you need the building's yours." So even in rainy season, we have a nice building to protect us from the rain. So these ladies were from the market. They sell vegetables as they're living. And Chiwanga here one month brought them tracts. And a couple of ladies said to him later, "These papers have changed our lives. What do we do now?" So we ended up starting this Bible study. This has been going for quite a few years now. This last trip that I did, January, February, one of the ladies came, and the next week she came again, and she said, "I always liked it when the ladies came to your Bible study because I could sell more vegetables because their stands were empty." She says, now that I come to your Bible study, I don't care how many vegetables I sell while they're away. I want to come to the Bible study too. So it's very, very encouraging. They're from all denominations, but they're just happy to be at the Bible study. One of the ladies, I wonder if she's here. Yeah, there she is right there. She said to me, she said, why doesn't my pastor teach what you're teaching about the cross? Because we're going through the 7 sayings of Calvary. I said, I have no idea why your pastor doesn't teach what I teach about the cross. That's up to him. I said, but I tell you this, you get to the cross, you'll leave a really, really different person. Because the cross changes people. So it's been a very encouraging thing. Thursday, youth Bible study. So glad you did a sword drill. You know, I'm not allowed to start this Bible study unless I do a sword drill. They'll stop me every time. They're like, Mr. Shawn, you have to do the sword drill. Like, oh, yeah, okay. I almost forgot. Yeah. They love sword drill. This was the group that closed December of last year. It was so big I had to do 2 groups. So this is actually one. I had 60 plus kids in the Bible study. There's only 60 chairs, so I was standing and one young person was sitting on the floor. This gentleman here in orange, this gentleman here on the end in blue, they're actually in university for medical studies. But when they're home on break, they started the Bible study in 2011. When they're home on break, they come just for the Bible study. They don't want the prizes, they don't want the candy, they don't want the points. They just want the Bible study. And I tell them, if you've been in my Bible study in the past, you're free to come anytime. Doors open. So there were 61. So I ended up doing 2 groups to do the Bible study close in 2022. And they're very, very really group. They're not unruly at all. It's amazing. I really expected that I was going to be pulling my hair out, but I wasn't. One of the things I do while I'm there is help old people. There are quite a few old people that do not get any assistance, and so I will deliver food. This was a Christmas run. Um, there's meal, there's hot chocolate there, and the little trailer I have behind the 4-wheeler really helps, so I don't have to keep going back to the house to load up. Here's some of the old folks we have. This is Tom. As far as he knows, he was born in 1923. So go ahead and do the math on that. It's pretty easy because it's 2023. Marina, and this gentleman down here, Maku, he has, it's cerebral palsy. He's in the Assembly of Mangu. So we often bring food up to Mangu when he's there. This gentleman up here, John Sankangi, passed away about 2 weeks ago. They think he was around 99. Hard to know. He's blind. In fact, he was in the hospital about 3-4 weeks ago now, maybe more, because his son wasn't taking care of him. You could see his bones. You could physically see his bones in his arms and his legs. So Julie Rachel Elwood, who's a nurse, a missionary nurse from Northern Ireland, I told her about it. She went out and saw him. She went back and got her trailer and carted him off to the hospital, and she admitted him under her authority. So here's some other folks. Mrs. Koema, her husband, who passed away from cancer, he was an elder in Chitokoloki. Robinson Kaposhi. Robinson is an interesting man. He always said, I walked with George Suckling. George Suckling was the man who founded Chitokoloki Mission in 1914. Came up the Zambezi, pulled his canoe in on the banks and said, well, this looks like a good place, and started Chitokoloki Mission in 1914. He was his cook, according to Robinson, so you know how old he is. Robinson was a drunk, not a real fan of the gospel. Quite a few years ago now, his grandson passed away. He was a police officer. He hung himself. And I went up to visit him as he couldn't go to the funeral, too old. So I went up to visit him at the village. And I said, Robinson, could I come back and talk to you about God? He said, yeah, I think that would be good. So we went back and talked to Robinson, and his life has changed. Nobody's sure why. Now, how do I play this one, Peter? This is Mr. and Mrs. Chingungu. These are the folks from Nyamonga. Can you play it there? Oh, there it is. She sings this to me every time I come back to Canada. Is there volume? Oh, I put Peter on the spot here. Maybe not. Every time I come back now, she sings in Little Valley, God be with you till we meet again. And it reminds me of the old time missionaries getting on the ship, people standing on the jetty singing that very song. It broke my heart the first time she did it to me. I couldn't video it. This was like the second or third time she sang it to me because the first time I wept to hear a woman singing in Little Valley, God be with you till we meet again. Oh, now it's going to play. I am involved in the school still, even though they built a storeroom. I did the electrical for them. Any electricians in the building? Great. In October, I got a call from one of the folks at the school, and they said, we've got the storeroom ready. It just needs painting. And I'm like, I'm not the painter. My wife's the painter. They're like, no, we don't want you to paint, but we want you to teach us how to paint. So I went up, and over the course of 3 days, I taught 4 teachers how to paint, and they painted the storeroom. And that building turned into that. They were just thrilled. They learned how to paint, and I didn't have to paint, so I was thrilled. This practical work, the food, practical work, opens spiritual doors. The best saying I have is a hungry person won't listen to the gospel. If you don't help them practically, they won't listen to you. It takes a long time to gain their trust. But when you have doors like this open, why not use them? Often now, the headmaster will ask me to speak on Independence Day, which is October 24th. Will ask me to go and preach the gospel at Independence Day celebrations that happen at the school because of this kind of work. I will still go in, hand out pencil cases to everybody starting grade 12 because they don't have pencils and pens. They just don't have them. They're hard to get. And so I'll go out with a Rubbermaid of pencil cases with a couple of pencils and eraser and hand it out to the students in grade 12. And there'll be 4 people sharing one pencil until they get a pencil case. 2022, September, I was asked to speak at a local conference with this young man here, this Dr. Chibwe. He had 5 sessions, 1.5 hours. Talk about killing your preachers. He had 5 1.5 hour sessions. I had 4 1.5 hour sessions in the local language. Saturday at lunch, he and there's Chimwanga, one of the elders, there's Mr. Nkanza, the other elder, they all 3 came to me and they said, Dr. Chibwe doesn't think he can preach after the breaking of bread tomorrow. Can you do it? I'm like, I can, but I won't be there Saturday night to listen to him preach. He's like, that's fine. You don't have to listen to me preach. So I don't have to preach tomorrow. Off you go and you prepare. You recognize that, Andrew? Mm-hmm. In Shima, which is a cornmeal mixed with a cassava meal, some beef because it's conference. That's my favorite right there. It's cabbage and onion and tomato relish. That is so good. One of my favorites. That's our house in Chitokoloki. People always ask. Solar panels, solar water heater. Now it's about 1.5 years ago, we are finally hooked up to the government power grid, which is really exciting. That you can power. Keep your eye on this tree right here. I'm going to burn through this. That tree right there is this tree right here. It fell down March 2022. And from March 2022 until this trip now, February, I've been working away at it. Trying to cut up the pieces. There's one piece there. 28.5 inches across. You can see there's Fred, one of my workers. You can see how the tree relates to him. I finally got it down to this. Thankfully, there was a gentleman who came to help me. He got this all, and this is what my yard looks like right now. So I got most of it cleaned up. There's still the remainder of that has to go. Zambian sunset, the wonders of God. The wonders of God. There's a Zambian office right there. Anybody want to work in that office? That is the Zambezi River. They're working on the water pipes. This gentleman here, Justin, I had to go down and chat with him. He's in his office. He's working. I can't. So I just went down, sat with him, we chatted. There are crocodiles in that river. There's 3 of us there, so it should be okay, right? Now, I've gone through that quick, but I'd like you to pray for these three young men right here. These men, I've seen maturity in them and amazing ability to preach and minister. Chimwanga Chambala, the one in the middle there, like I said, he's an elder in the assembly. He's headman of his village, and he works at the school. Rufus, he is works at the hospital, uh, has a huge family, but great preacher of the gospel. And then John, he runs the family shop, and John is Barnabas. He's the encourager. Wyatt, I'll go into a shop to buy something. He'll throw me a bag of candy and give them two this Sunday. But pray for these men. They are active in the preaching of the gospel, and they are constantly being attacked by Satan because they're preaching the gospel. I know that was really fast. It's probably no different. Somebody was mentioning the last time I was here out at the tent on that breezy Tuesday night before COVID. Was it during COVID?
Yeah.
During COVID. That's why you're in the tent.
Yeah.
Yeah. When I go back April 25th, so what's happening is Ron and the girls are staying here. They're going to school, and I go back and forth every 2 months. Lord willing, once the girls are established, Ron and I will go back full time. That's the plan, Lord willing. But in the meanwhile, I go back and forth every 2 months. I always say I'm not getting younger, and the trip's not getting shorter. But we have seen such blessing over the last year and a half that we've been doing this. It's well worth the while. We've seen people who have confessed faith. We have seen individuals grow spiritually, and we are so thankful to the Lord that when I'm there, I'm out full tilt. Normally, the Zambezi Bible study every second Monday. Now I do it every Monday. Feeding old people once a month. Now I do it every 2 weeks. So I'm full out while I'm there. It's just me. So I can eat whenever I want to eat. I don't have a schedule to keep. And if I don't eat, well, then it's my own fault. Can't blame anybody else. So you end up eating. I always eat. Look at me. I always eat. So I'm okay. Anyway, pray for the work. Pray for the people. There's a lot to take away from the work. There's a lot of success, but where there's success, the devil's working too, because he knows God's working and he wants to take away from it. So I'll ask you to pray for these three men. John, there's the end. Chibwanga, and Rufus. Let's just close in prayer. Sorry for keeping you over. Father, we give thanks for your word and for the ability to free men and women and boys and girls from their sin. Cast your blessing on your people again in Chitokoloki, Kaliula, Mayangu, Iamonga, even little places like Lotembo and Zambezi. We just pray your rich blessing, Father. Give thanks for the assembly here at Newmarket and their outreaches, the Sunday school and the gospel. We just pray a rich, rich blessing. As we part now, parse with your blessings, we pray. In the name of the Lord Jesus Christ. Amen. Recorders.